Hey everybody, welcome back to Eating with Evans. This week we're going to make a blackened chicken wrap. We're going to make our own blackening seasoning and we're going to cook it on a cast iron pan to give it that nice blackened look. For this recipe we're going to need some large flour tortillas. I went with the burrito size. Hopefully these are going to be large enough so that I don't have issues rolling up the wrap later on. Going to need about 4 boneless, skinless chicken thighs for this recipe. We're going to use this Chipotle lime mayo from Primal Kitchen. I love that it's made with avocado oil, and you really can't beat the ingredients that are listed in this mayo. We'll need about 1 large romaine heart, 1 vine ripened tomato. As always, we'll need kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. And this is our blackening seasoning mix. This is a combination of a few different spices, so I'm going to go into detail on how to make this. To make our blackening seasoning that we're going to put on our chicken, we're going to leverage the seasoning that's already in a standard taco seasoning. I have this big one that I got from Costco. If you don't have a large taco seasoning blend like this one, what you can do is buy a few of the pouches, I would say probably 3 or 4 of the pouches, to replace the amount of taco seasoning that we're going to put in this recipe. To my dish I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of taco seasoning, 1 tablespoon of chili powder, a teaspoon of fresh cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of granulated garlic, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and some freshly cracked pepper. I'm going to use a fork to combine this together. And this is the blackening seasoning that I'm going to toss my chicken in before I go blacken it on my cast iron pan. The very first thing I want to do is prep my vegetables. So I'm going to start by cutting my tomato. What I like to do is take a sharp knife, turn the tomato up on its end, and I start cutting from the bottom. And I'm going to cut some thin slices. Once you get to the end, you're going to be left with the remnants of the core. All I'm going to do with the top of this is cut around the core. And I'm going to do the same thing with this piece because it's got a little bit of the core left in here too. Now I'm going to finish cutting up the rest of this tomato into diced pieces. This is my 1 vine ripened tomato diced. The next thing that I like to take care of is my romaine. So as you can see, I've got a whole heart of romaine here. What I'm going to do first is cut off the end, and then I'm going to make long slices right down the middle here, rotate 90 degrees, do the same thing, and then I'm going to run my knife through. And this gives me beautifully chopped romaine that's in fairly small pieces that are going to be great inside our wrap. So now that my romaine's cut, I want to wash this lettuce. If you don't have one already, I highly recommend getting a salad spinner. I really like this one by OXO brand. It's really durable and it has a large capacity. I love this one. So all I'm going to do is fill up my basket. I'm going to take this over to the sink, rinse the lettuce, and then spin it out. You can see how much water was left in the bottom of this just by spinning out the lettuce once. So I'm going to dump this water and I'm going to spin the romaine one more time just to make sure I get as much moisture off as possible. And this is my 1 heart of romaine that's been chopped and washed. If you're not feeling like you want to cut up the romaine yourself and wash it, they do sell romaine that's pre-chopped and is labeled as triple washed. Just to be on the safe side, where romaine tends to be dirty a lot of the time, I would make sure that I would still wash it even when I got it home. Now that we finished all the veggies, we're going to work on cutting up our boneless, skinless chicken thighs. The reason that I like to use chicken thighs for this recipe is they're a lot juicier than chicken breasts and they're a little bit more forgiving when you're cooking. Because there's more fat within the thigh meat, it's a lot less difficult to cook these without them being overcooked and tough. So here are my 4 boneless, skinless chicken thighs. What I like to do is take a little bit of this excess fat off of the sides of it. That's only personal preference. You could totally leave that and it would be fine for this recipe. But what you definitely want to do is you want to make sure that whoever was butchering this didn't leave any bones or any excess tendons or anything that are going to be too chewy later on. As you can see right here, whoever butchered this left a bone. So I'm going to cut and remove this from my chicken. Always be cognizant that just because it says that it's boneless and skinless doesn't mean that they are 100% perfect. They're human. They're going to accidentally leave some bones in every once in a while. Just be cognizant, feel around before you just go cooking it, and make sure that you've removed any bones that are throughout this meat. all I'm really doing as I'm trimming this fat, as I'm pulling up with my fingers, I'm just going to lightly skim my knife and cut away as little to no meat as possible. And I just want to remove as much fat as I can away from the chicken thigh. You can also probably tell that I've tried to flatten out these chicken thighs a little bit. This chicken thigh, I haven't done anything to it yet. You can see it's a little bit more plump than these other three. So what I did was when I flipped it over, I looked at the portion of the thigh that has a lot more meat, and I just ran my knife along halfway through the meat and butterflied it so that it's all the same thickness across the entire chicken thigh. So at this point, these chicken thighs are ready to be dredged in our blackening seasoning. So in order to dredge these, all I really want to do is sprinkle on some kosher salt right directly on the chicken thighs. This is to make sure that the chicken's going to be seasoned. Even though we put a little salt in our blackening seasoning, there's no reason for the chicken to be under-seasoned when we're done making this chicken. Now, using the same hand throughout the process, I'm just going to take my chicken thigh, coat it once in the blackening seasoning, flip it over, coat it again, make sure that it's coated all over, shake off the excess. Do that 3 more times with these other chicken thighs. Now that I've finished dredging these chicken thighs in the blackening seasoning, I'm going to get my 12-inch cast iron skillet preheating on my stovetop over medium-high heat. So at this point, now that I've preheated my cast iron skillet, I'm going to add in a few tablespoons of avocado oil. As I said before, avocado oil has a high smoke point, which is great for this recipe. So what I'm going to do is add my chicken one piece at a time. And what we're trying to do here is develop some nice color on one side. And once we've cooked a nice sear on one side, we're going to flip this over and let it continue to cook until it is done. The reason I'm using cast iron here instead of a non-stick pan is cast iron is really good at distributing heat evenly, which is exactly what we need in this instance, where we've got the chicken covering nearly the entire pan. We don't want to have a hot spot right in the middle and not have the rest of the chicken cook evenly. So that's the benefit to using a cast iron pan here. I've been looking at this chicken that started to develop a nice color on the other side, so we're going to flip it. As you can see, we developed a nice blackened color, which is the spices kind of charring here on the other side. Now we're going to let this chicken cook through for another 2 or 3 minutes until the chicken reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees. And now that the chicken's reached 165 degrees, I'm going to remove it from the pan. So this is what all of our chicken looks like after it's been cooked. You can see that it got nice color from the blackening seasoning that started to cook in the oil on the cast iron skillet. And if I cut a piece open, you can tell that it's still super juicy on the inside. You can also see how the advantage of leaving it thin for this recipe, because we were able to cook that chicken in a little over 5 or 6 minutes in the cast iron skillet because it was so thin. At this point, I'm going to cut all this chicken into strips so that I can put this into my wrap to make my blackened chicken wrap. Now this chicken is ready to be rolled up into a wrap. To make one of these blackened chicken wraps, we're going to start by adding 1 tablespoon of our Chipotle lime mayo to our bowl. And we're going to add a small handful of our romaine lettuce. To this I'm going to add about 1/4 of our diced tomato. And I'm going to mix this up with tongs. Now I can add this to my flour tortilla. I usually like to add the lettuce and the tomatoes to the back of the wrap so that it makes it easier when I go to roll it up. So now I'm going to add about 1 thigh's worth of blackened chicken meat. What I'm going to do to fold this is I'm going to fold in the sides, and I'm going to roll this back part up with my thumbs up and over the lettuce and the chicken, and then I'm going to tuck it under and continue to roll this wrap. And here it is, completely wrapped without any explosions on the side. Now I'm going to take my knife and cut this on an angle. I'm going to hold it with my 2 fingers here so that it doesn't push the wrap in too much. Make sure your other fingers are out of the way. And this is the final dish. This is a blackened chicken wrap that we rolled up with romaine, tomatoes, and Chipotle lime mayo. We used a burrito-sized flour tortilla to wrap up all these ingredients. Hey everybody, I hope you guys love that recipe for my blackened chicken wraps as much as I do. If you did, be sure to hit the like button down below. While you're down there, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you get a push notification to your phone every single time that I put out a new video. If you haven't already, check out my Instagram page here at Eating with Evans. This is where I put out all the meals that I make throughout the week, including stuff you wouldn't necessarily see here on YouTube. Until next time.